My name is Pete Dewar. I'm Director of Brand Language here at The Clearing, which effectively means I'm Creative Director for Words. So I look after all aspects of written and verbal communication, tone of voice, naming, messaging. That's essentially it. I'd say it's not just design and copywriting, it's really design, writing and strategy. That's how we built the business around those three pillars, because throughout my career, really, where we'd got the strongest ideas, the strongest responses to any briefs was always when those three disciplines were combined. And I think the traditional model kind of in advertising, of writers and designers works to a degree. You don't see that so much in branding consultancies, but it was the strategy bit which was missing. And actually having those three perspectives has always been the best thing for us. And that's how it is here. So we really try and focus on having a writer, a designer and a strategist at any level within the business. So whether that's our level as principals or as kind of junior guys as well, we try and encourage those three disciplines to work together and to be really collaborative. I think any type of project in our business always has a really large component of writing. It's always a significant part of any project. Really, because it starts as soon as we start trying to articulate any ideas, we need to use words effectively in an emotive way, not just a functional way. And so when we're talking about the strategy and when we're trying to articulate the strategy in a positioning statement, in a brand promise, in a set of values, we need to think about words really creatively and imaginatively to bring the ideas that we want to bring to life. And I think if you don't have writers involved in that, you don't have copywriters involved in that process, then it's never as interesting or effective, I think. Language and behaviour are fundamentally linked for me. And so trying to unlock a tone of voice is really trying to think, what does the brand stand for? What's its promise? What does it promise its people, its customers? What are its values? And so that's always the starting point, the promise and the values, really, because that is the connecting point between language and behaviour for me. So we'll generally build a tone of voice out of those things. We always only have three values to make sure that it's just easy to remember, aren't too many words, try and make them as distinctive and meaningful as possible. And then you build a tone of voice out of that. So if the values reflect behaviour, they also reflect language, they reflect the personality of that brand. But we always approach it broadly from the same perspective. As I say, there's three values that are important to an organisation. There's a rational one, which kind of has a harder edge, a little bit more practical, a little bit more rational. There's an emotional one, which is maybe a little bit warmer, a little bit more human, gives a slightly softer edge. And then there's an aspirational one, which is the kind of stretchy value. What are they wanting to get to? That may not be absolutely true at the moment, but it's definitely an aspiration or a desire for the future. And so we would normally structure the values around those three things, so they each have very clear roles within the organisation. Then in terms of the tone of voice, we use those values to inform the tone of voice. So that if there's a rational one, it gives us a more practical, harder edge, maybe the basis for a lot of communication. The emotional and aspirational values then give us opportunities to flex the tone of voice where we need to be at our most distinctive. So maybe in advertising, a landing page on the website and social media, for instance. And it needs to have that modulation, just as you or I, our own tone of voice has that modulation, depending on whether we're warning our kids about something that's dangerous that's going to happen to them, or speaking to friends in a pub in a really sort of social, relaxed atmosphere, or meeting the Queen on an official visit. We're still ourselves, but we can modulate our tone accordingly, and the values really help us do that. So we tend to avoid those kind of completely abstract, meaningless names, partly because they're abstract and meaningless, and they require a massive amount of investment to build that meaning into them. And a lot of the companies that we work with these days just don't want to create that, or they don't want that level of investment up front. they want a name to be a little bit more immediate. And I think for us as well, we want a name to have a bit of a story so that when you hear it, there's something, it takes you somewhere instantly. When we created Fetch for Ocado, you hear Fetch and then you find out that it's their online pet store. It just makes sense. It takes you there. It's a little bit playful. It has an element of delivery to it as well, as obviously the kind of the grounding within the category. We're looking for names like that generally. So although that's not completely descriptive, it's not abstract either. So I'd say there's a third area really that's associative in the middle. And we quite often try and find names in that area. Real word names generally, rather than just completely abstract collections of letters. But they're much harder to get in terms of trademarks and URLs and those sorts of things. So it takes a lot more management to try and get those through.